Right. Get this, Labour leader, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner is being smeared over her tax affairs, apparently because she's a northern woman. Well, that's according to her Labour colleague David Lammy.
What a foolish, stupid thing to say. Just to remind people about David Lammy, when he was on Celebrity Mastermind, he was asked which monarch followed Henry VIII, and he said Henry VII.
Maybe just Labour just aren't good at any kind of numbers issue.
She's under pressure over her tax affairs, and it's relating to the sale of her home back in 2015, a former council house which she bought direct to buy. She says it was her principal residence.
As opposed to her second home, which would have been applicable for capital gains tax, wouldn't it?
So she says she's taken independent advice to say that she's in the clear. The pressure is publish it.
Should she just come clean? What would she have to say to put your mind at rest at home? And actually, would it affect anything about who you're going to vote for? Well, joining us now is former UKIP leader Henry Bolton and former editor of LabourList, Peter Edwards. Peter, are we being a bit harsh, the mainstream press here? Most of the newspapers are going after Angela Rayner on this one. I have to say, I feel a little bit sorry for her. I think it's probably a little bit of an oversight, or maybe she just slightly bent the rules.
I would not say that she bent the rules, but I think it was the royal family that had that phrase about never complain, never explain. So the media are always going to be tough on Labour in an election year, and the party has to live with that. Where I perhaps challenge some parts of the media is it's inverting the principles of British justice. It's not that someone that's innocent and has to prove they're innocent. It's if a newspaper like the Mail on Sunday believes that Angela Rayner is guilty of wrongdoing, it has to prove that. And from what I've read so far, it's not been proven. So according to British justice, you don't have to prove yourself innocent. It's down to your accusers to come up with something.
Well, Peter, you probably haven't read enough of the coverage then, because the Mail on Sunday has quoted extensively neighbours of the house where she claimed she was living, and they said she did not live there. She moved out, she moved in with her husband, and the house was rented out to her brother. That's what the neighbours have said. Are the neighbours lying?
Well, I've no idea, and Andrew,
well, how can you assume then that Peter, you said the Mail on Sunday have produced no evidence. They've produced a series of neighbours who said she's lying. I'm asking you, are the neighbours lying?
Andrew, first of all, the Mail on Sunday produced allegations. They've not produced proof. Secondly, the neighbours in Stockport are up the road I've not met, so I'm not going to trash them when I've no idea who they are. But I'm sure, as a reasonable person, you accept the point. It's down to an accuser to prove wrongdoing rather than a politician to have to prove their innocence.
Henry, does she have to prove her innocence now? Does she have to come out and show maybe the tax return from that year, or perhaps there was written correspondence from a tax advisor to say that she didn't have to pay capital gains?
Indeed, I think that was. I think we've almost moved past that point now. That's what she should have done at the beginning. Look, this is a non-story, everybody. Here is the legal advice I've taken. This is my accountant's advice. I've complied with that fully. If there is a problem there, then, let's get that out in the open and I will address it. That could have killed this dead, probably, but she didn't. She's kept this, whatever advice she's had from whoever she's had it, she's kept that a secret. It's not out there in the public eye, and I appreciate there might be some public information, some private information in there that she doesn't want to reveal. Well, that needs to be redacted. But fundamentally, what we've got here is a situation that she is creating, or she is enabling, the Labour Party is enabling, and that is that to further the disappointment of the British people in terms of the transparency and the integrity of our politicians on all sides. We're not talking about William Ragg at the moment, but there's the man on the Conservative side who should be out now without any hesitation. If he doesn't resign, he should be kicked out. I'm saying the same thing about Angela Rayner. She should publish whatever her defence, if you like, or go. And that's not a matter. We've just heard that there are accusations. Yes, there are plenty of accusations out there that are unfounded, and many people in all sorts of walks of life have lost their jobs, had their lives destroyed because of accusations that have been unfounded. Well, let's see that this is unfounded. If Angela Rayner has got the evidence that it's unfounded, why doesn't she clear it up?
Peter, do you think that, ironically, this might play to the benefit of Labour? Because there are some people, I think, who would go, well, actually, if I had a second home, or if but the reason we're talking about a second home is because she bought the council house, hadn't I think we have to be really clear about this, but then she'd moved in with her then partner.
Yeah, but she says she kept the council house
as the primary
as her principal residence.
As a principal residence. And I think there'll be people saying, well, £1,500 she should have paid. Maybe it doesn't really matter now. It was a few years ago. You know, stop giving her a hard time. It casts her as a bit of a victim, and some people might vote for Labour because they feel a bit sorry for her.
I wouldn't put it quite in those terms. So I think honesty and integrity are important all the time, even if we're talking about pounds. Although, obviously, viewers will remember that Nadeem Zahawi, the former Tory chair, had a reported settlement of £5 million with HMRC, which led to his resignation. I think there's a broader point that certain parts of the public realise that Labour get a very tough time in an election year. You'll both remember that when Ed Miliband was leader, there was an allegation against him in several newspapers that ran over inheritance tax, alleged avoidance. And that was also not proven. So these things do come up in an election year. Secondly, I'd say Angela's published more information about her separation, her home and her children, all quite intimate matters, than many other politicians ever do.
Henry, Peter mentioned Nadeem Zahawi and the £5 million. It's not about the amount of money, in my view. It's about the principle. If tax was due, it should have been paid. And if it's and is she being honest about it? It doesn't matter if it's £500 or £5 million, in my view.
I agree. It's about whether or not she's lying about it. If this was an innocent mistake, she should cough up to it and pay what's due. And provide some sort of evidence that she's not been lying with ill intent. Now, there's two other things about this. One is she's been asked about this many, many times. She has denied it vociferously, and then the Mail on Sunday published evidence that she's lying. And it's pretty damning evidence, I have to say. And it's certainly, I'm a former police officer. It would be the sort of evidence that absolutely I'd want to open an investigation about if it was a criminal matter. But there's the other thing that she has also, there's a hypocrisy there. She has called upon various Conservatives to resign with immediate effect because they have demonstrated that they've lied or misled somebody or something, including Boris Johnson. And now she's failing to meet the same standards that she was applying to them. And the third thing is that the other element that we've not mentioned in this particular discussion so far is that is about where she registered for standing for in the general election. So there is this issue, and I don't know the detail. I don't know. I wouldn't like to judge it, but still there is an issue as to whether or not she lied about where she was living, whether it was the address that she registered for the election. That needs to be investigated as well. This is a whole series of things that are making her, and I think the Labour Party and all politicians, look extremely bad. It needs to be dealt with. It cannot go on. British public are losing credibility by in their politicians by the moment. And
Peter,
this is just making matters worse.
Is David Lammy right that we're treating her differently because she's a woman and because she's Northern? Because in my experience, Northern women are pretty good at sticking up for ourselves.
Well, I've lived in West Yorkshire and in Carlisle, so it's a very blunt environment, which I enjoyed. I've not seen everything David Lammy said, but I think you both agree there is. I think there's a bit of an undercurrent of sexism in British kind of political journalism, almost non-stop, and it was very sad. But that's a separate point that everyone has to be honest about their tax affairs, with no exception. OK, all right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Fascinating.
Very much. Henry Bolton, Peter Edwards there.